This whole video is about kittens. What's up, YouTube? Today we're going to be putting this baby kitten in a blender, so stay tuned.
This is definitely not going to be a cheesy inspirational video where I'm like, you can do it, you just got to put your mind to it, you can do anything. It's nothing like that. I'm going to blaze through this as fast as I can because I know that, we all have a goldfish attention span. So I've been playing for 20 years now, and all 20 years in my bedroom, and I've dealt with a very large plethora of problems. So I'm just going to give you guys some tips on random shit in no order whatsoever. Like I didn't even plan this through, not one bit. I can't be bothered to do that. I've been flirting with the idea of YouTubing forever, but yeah, it's not for me. But I will make a video today that hopefully inspires or helps with certain issues or whatever. So one of the first tips is that the circumstances for anything will never be perfect. You can tell yourself, oh, I'll get to it next week. Procrastination is so easy and organic to do. I'll do it next week. I'll get around to it, when I'm done school or when I start the next chapter of my life, when this happens or this happens, whatever. But now is just as good a time as any. And I know that's kind of contradicting to the whole cheesy inspirational quote shit I was just talking about, but it's very true. Just do everything right now because you'll feel so much better, and that's how you create momentum and shit starts get moving. Things start to move. Another really important tip I have is to make things as streamlined as possible, as simplistic as they can possibly be, because when things start feeling like a chore, it starts feeling like work. That really takes away the drive and the ambition to do things, and it starts requiring more discipline to get things done, But if things are simple, if they're easier, people like simple things, People like things that are easy. And I think that the endeavor of guitar is already such a challenging endeavor, and creating a tone and whatever it is, right? Whatever, recording music, all of these things that's such a grand feat on its own, that all of the more minor things that cultivate that should be simple. We'll get into that a little bit more. So for instance, 10 years ago, we weren't there with digital gear. I used the Pod XT and then the Pod HD Pro, and it just didn't have the same feel as analog gear. It didn't feel good, didn't sound very good, but today we're absolutely there now with all the neural plugins. I've got the Fractal FM3 right here, which is an incredible unit. It's a deep dive unit, but it doesn't have to be that way. You can just, this thing has like every amp on the planet, every cab and pedal, whatever on the planet. You can even change the way like the lights in the room affect the tone, which is complete overkill. You can change the tubes, all that stuff. But even with such an extensive unit, I only find myself using 2-3 presets that I made. There's nothing wrong with that. That's what I'm going back to, but the simplicity of things. I would genuinely say there has never been a more exciting time to get into guitar than right now, and I'm not being biased about that. I genuinely mean that, because with all of the ease of plugins and even mixing and mastering to an extent now, even a free DAW like Reaper, which is what I use to record, the stock VSTs, the stock EQ and limiter for all of that stuff is incredible. It's amazing. In fact, that's what all of my albums were done with so far. I just think that digital is so streamlined and easy and on the go. You don't have to have this massive pedal board or amps in your room anymore. You do kind of lose out on the physical aspect of things, but it's just so much easier to get into it now. All you need is a laptop and an interface, and you can get a $5,000 tone at your fingertips. What's more exciting than that? Man, I don't know if you guys have ever made a YouTube video, but it is the strangest fucking thing, just staring into a camera talking to yourself. I could do this a million times and it will never ever feel natural. This is the weirdest thing ever, and I don't like it. But so I'm just doing this for you guys. I don't benefit off this at all. Trust me, this is all for you guys. I view the guitar as just a vessel for music. For instance, I don't actually listen to guitar music anymore. I actually can't stand guitar music. I don't listen to any bands or any. I'm pretty much immediately turned off of anything like that. Like, I listen to a lot of late night R&B and especially ambient music. Like, I love ambient music. It's all just VSTs and long drawn out pads and music that puts you in deep thought. You just put it on in the background and just let it play all day. That's that's my background. That's where I come from. So I'm very like uncaged with guitar. You know, I don't view it as guitar music. It's just an instrument to play music on, you know? But I mean, even when I'm practicing, I play against like drum and bass music and just weird stuff like that. I feel like when it comes to guitar and inspiration towards guitar, I've kind of had to, or I've gotten to a point where I've had to sort of count on myself for inspiration and almost brute force it. Because again, I don't listen to guitar music, so I'm pushing through and just taking inspiration from the most wild things, like just real life or whatever, you know, whatever circumstances are happening in life, and like it could be anything from movies to like relationships to, I don't know, just different chapters or events in your life that make you feel good. And that's what I'm pulling inspiration from. You know, I'm actually not really pulling inspiration from other musicians and being like, hey, I like the way he sounds, I want to play like him, or I love that technique he's doing, I want to do that too. You know, it's almost utterly non-guitar related, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You know, that's just I think the sooner you understand that inspiration is universal, the better. I think that it's completely normal to have days where you feel caged and uninspired and almost convinced that you're bored of the instrument as a whole. It's actually way more organic and normal than you think it is. I mean, even my favorite players, the last few that I have left, when I watch them play and I watch their videos and stuff like that, if you watch a couple videos, you start noticing that they're kind of caged as well, you know? I mean, maybe they have a bigger vocabulary than you do, but ultimately you'll start seeing these little isms that they do that make them them, you know, this, whether it's this little chord progression they're constantly using, or this little run of notes or whatever in a different key every time, you know, stuff like that. So I think that everybody is caged to an extent, you know, and just don't beat yourself up about that, because that's way more normal than you think it is. One of the most important tips I think I have is learning how to do even just a basic setup for your guitar on your own, because you'll find yourself wanting to play an instrument that feels good, feels set up. That helps just the ambition to play tenfold. Oh my God, it's so important. And it seems like such a daunting thing. I think I actually only really started getting kind of in depth with it the last couple of years myself, but God, is it ever a game changer, you know? So I'll teach you guys two quick things. I watched a video on a Fender custom shop, like master builder, and he said something called train, which is you tune the guitar and then you deal with the relief and then you set the action and then the intonation, and then he came up with noodle for the end. So TRAIN, train. And you set up your guitar in that order. And that's been amazing. I mean, just remembering that, doing it in that order, so simple, way easier than you think it is. I think that owning multiple guitars can help with inspiration, but I think that the goal should be to have different guitars that make different sounds. They do different things, they feel differently, and they inspire different ideas. Otherwise, it's kind of redundant, because if you have two guitars that do the exact same thing, you're bound to favor one of them and the other one just kind of gets neglected. And I also feel that it's kind of overkill to have a lot of guitars, because it's higher on maintenance. You know, guitars are made of wood, and wood fluctuates with humidity and climate change and whatever. I mean, even if I just let a guitar sit there in the guitar rack over a winter and stuff like that, you know, the truss rod needs to be adjusted and whatnot by the end of the season, which is not a big deal. But you'll find yourself, if you're not adamant about resetting that guitar back up, then it just sits in your rack and needs a truss rod adjustment, and it's just one of those things where you're like, oh, I'll get to it, you know, I'll get to it later, and you never do, and you just keep favoring the guitars that feel better to you. So I think that it's good to have like a roster of guitars you actually use and don't have any benched. I think that it's okay to cover music and to borrow ideas and chords and whatever you're finding in this music and in inspiration, but I would be very mindful about letting it take over, you know? I think that the end goal of all of this is to create your own sound, to make your own music, to record your own music, you know? So I think that it's okay to extract things from other musicians and ideas, but you should be putting your own spin on it and incorporating it into your own playing. I think that maybe this is subjective, but I think that forging your own sound and recording your own music is kind of the ultimate goal for all of this, in my opinion. You know, learning about tone, learning how to play guitar, learning all these techniques and everything should be a cultivation for making your own music, you know? That's kind of the end goal. Something I've been struggling with since the dawn of being a bedroom guitarist was noise. Oh my god, noise is like the bane of my existence, and there's been a couple things that I have figured out over the course of time to manage it. It's definitely still there, but it does help. So good cables, first of all. I just ordered a set of Mogami cables. Supposedly they're like some of the most isolated cables on the market. They're pricey, but they have a lifetime warranty. You buy them once and you've got them forever. I'm not endorsed by them to say that. Ferrite beads, or ferrite cores. So it's actually like a little magnetic thing. You can get them. They're super cheap on Amazon, wherever, and they slip around a cord, and ultimately they reduce the higher frequencies coming out of any sort of cable, whether it's a source cable or a power cable. So pretty interesting. Obviously noise gates and fret wraps, everybody's heard of those. Not bunching your wires together. I know that it's very, I did it for many years, but all of the wires behind my computer, you know, I just put Velcro around them all, tie them all together, but that actually produces a lot of EMI. And then ground loops. So let's say my amp, my interface, and my computer, all of these things are interconnected in some way. You know, I've got a USB running from one, and then my interface running to my computer, but also my Axe-Fx running to my computer. So a ground loop would be if I have them plugged into different outlets. Say my Axe-Fx is plugged into one outlet, while my computer and my interface are in another outlet. This can potentially cause what's called a ground loop, which causes buzzing, humming, whatever, just nasty noise and interference in your tone. So to prevent that, you want to have everything ultimately plugged into one outlet. It's okay if it's in a power bar, but it just has to be from that one outlet. I think a good analogy with practice is like, let's use Call of Duty, because everybody's played Call of Duty. You know, you pick up the controller and you run around and you shoot, and if you do that enough, you do get better. And that's kind of the same way as guitar. You know, if you pick up the guitar and you just autopilot through it, you will find yourself getting better regardless of the intensity of your practice, you know. But if somebody said to you like, hey man, if you drop 50 kills this game, I'll give you $10 million. You know, I guarantee you'd be thinking of it very differently. You'd be thinking of that game very differently. You'd be thinking of all the little techniques and whatever you could do to get, you know, the goal completed, to speed your learning up. Or if they said, I'll give you 1 week to really learn how to play this game to see if you can do this challenge, you know, you'd pull at all the stops. You'd try to accelerate your learning the best you could. I think it's the same way with guitar. You know, it's not just about how long you've been playing, but about the intensity of the practice and the intent of the practice. I think it's important to have a really inspiring workspace. I mean, obviously mine's pretty wild. Yours doesn't have to be a giant cherry blossom studio, but it should reflect you and it should feel good to work in. You know, I've always found that having a clean, quiet, quaint environment that just feels good to be in, feels good to work in, you know. And you know, if your room and your life isn't cluttered, it just feels like a more just feels easier to get work done, you know. Feels easier to be inspired. I can't recommend it enough to just spend one day setting up everything to be streamlined, you know. Set up all your guitars, restring them, set the action, set the truss rod, set the intonation, dial in your amp tones, get the best sound you possibly can in that one day, and then you don't have to touch it again because you're happy with your tone, you know. Just set it and leave it. When it comes to your recording DAW, set all your hotkeys for recording so you just have a one click so you can comp yourself and do whatever, you know, things just to make things so much easier It should be easy, because ease is what will make things alluring. Really quickly, I'm going to guide you guys through a quick half-ass cheap setup, because I think that a good setup is the fastest way to make any guitar feel amazing. Even a piece of junk can become very playable. So the first thing you're going to do, so following with that Fender custom shop master luthier guy said, train. So the first one is to tune your guitar. The second one is to set the relief. So if you look straight down the neck, you will see your neck either has an up bow or a back bow. If it has a back bow, your strings will be buzzing at the first, second fret, all the way up to like around the 24th fret, whatever, something like that. And it won't buzz in the middle. So that means you have a back bow. If you have an up bow, the action will feel absolutely horrible, feel extremely high off the neck, but there won't be any buzz. So the neck will be like this. And again, the back bow would be like this. So you want a relatively straight neck. If you really like to dig in, then you want a slight up bow. I have a very gentle touch, so I like my necks very straight. Next thing is the action. So you'll need a small Allen key for these saddles here, and you will turn left to bring the saddle down, lowering the action, or you'll turn it right to increase the action, making the string go higher off the fretboard. So there are specific numbers that they recommend that you go to. Honestly, you can just eyeball it yourself and just play. If you're buzzing around the fretboard when you're playing, then obviously you've gone too low, right? So it's going to change from person to person. It depends. There's a lot of variables, you know, the gauges you're using, how hard you like to dig in, etc., stuff like that. So don't worry about numbers. That's your action. It's better to set it to something than just nothing at all, you know. The next thing is the intonation. Okay, so the intonation is keeping frets perfectly in tune all the way up the fretboard. Now, this is usually impossible for most guitars unless it has a perfect scale length and perfect fretwork. Very few guitars do have that. A lot of people recommend making sure a string is in tune 0, so unfretted, and then on the 12th fret. I don't recommend that. I think that the 9th fret and the 21st fret will heed better results across the whole fretboard. And the last one he said was a noodle. So just try your guitar out, see how it feels, and go from there. Just so you know, intonating from the 9th and 21st fret is not my recommendation. I actually saw it in a video of John Sir and a couple other custom builders, and that was one of the things they did, so I'll take their word for it. This is an Ibanez AZ ES31. It's a fixed bridge Strat Ibanez, and that's another thing about the guitars today, is this is considered budget entry-level guitar. And I feel like the entry-level guitars have gotten absolutely phenomenal today. I mean, the competition is fierce out there. Yeah, so just because something is budget absolutely does not mean that it's not built well. And again, with a good setup, you can make even the cheapest of instruments feel pretty good. I think I have pretty good social skills, just not when I'm fucking talking to myself in my bedroom, you know?